Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another week of Hoops and Homers. You'll notice we're back on the couch today. That is a welcome sight, I'm sure, for some. I did want to feel a little bit more comfortable while we're doing this show. Oh, seems like I'm up and running today. See, I'm trying to find more discreet ways to be the tech guy for this podcast because it kind of feels awkward starting off every show with this 30-second gap of time where I'm kind of just like fiddling with technology. Glad to see that works. Anyway, we're back on the couch, but we also have the hoop today. You'll notice that there's a hoop, and that's just a good sign. You know, it's hoops and homers. I've had the homers covered for a while here on this podcast, but now we have the hoops. It's official, guys. This is Hoops and Homers. So welcome back, one and all, guys, gals. This is incredibly promising. You see the title right up here on the screen right now. The Nuggets and the Rockies had an incredibly promising week in many different ways. And we're about, we're about to tackle that week that the Nuggets had and a lot of interesting stuff going on in Colorado Rockies world. We're going to give you the state of the organization right now and what happened over the last week in the winter meetings. But let's start off with the Nuggets like we usually do. Nuggets held it down this week. Okay. Now, my prior week predictions for the team didn't go so well. The Nuggets had a good week. They went 2-0. I did not have a good week. I don't think a single one of my predictions came true. Okay. As a refresher, I said the Nuggets would beat the Hornets by at least 15 points. I said that the Nuggets would beat the Kings by 5 to 10 points. I said that the Nuggets would make at least 15 threes in both games. And I said that Spencer Jones would get at least 15 points in at least one game. None of those came true. Okay, so we had some success the last few weeks. We said Peyton Watson needed to take some more corner threes. He did that. We said Spencer Jones needed to get more involved last week, 2 weeks ago. He did that. So we were bound for a return to the mean. None of these predictions came true. But the Nuggets did beat the Hornets, okay, 115 to 106, and they did beat the Kings 136 to 105. So I literally got those predictions reversed, which is fine. But let's talk about the Hornets game first. That game was a lot closer than I think a lot of us thought it would be. Look, you're going in to Charlotte. Charlotte's the 12th ranked team in the Eastern Conference. Okay, they're not very good. Okay, they're middle of the pack on offense. Defensively, they're at the bottom of the league. And they shoot a ton, but they don't make a ton of threes. So you figured that this would be a game on paper that even though the Nuggets aren't healthy, they'd be able to win by some 15, 20 points, even though they're on the road. Even though they've won 9 in a row going into this game against the Hornets on the road. So that was a little bit unique. But the Hornets make their free throws. Even though they turned the ball over a ton, there really was no reason for you to believe that the Hornets would keep this game close. And that's exactly what happened. Okay. After the first quarter, the game was tied. All right. So it was pretty close throughout the entirety of the beginning of this game. Charlotte actually won the second quarter. Okay. They won the second quarter by 1. So they went into the half up by 1 point. They had a 4-point lead later in the half. So it was, again, kind of close. Really no separation was had here. The teams were battling back and forth pretty evenly. And then the third quarter came around, and the Nuggets did what they do best, typically this season in their wins, and they won the third quarter. They won the third quarter by 7. They actually had their largest lead at that point. It was 7 points. And then going into the fourth quarter, the Nuggets won the quarter by 3, and they had a 13-point lead at one point in the fourth quarter, which is why I was so excited that maybe one of my predictions might come true. Late in that game, they just needed 2 points to make my first prediction correct. They didn't do that. So ultimately, all that matters is that they got the win. That's really all we care about. And it was a pretty handy win on paper, at least. Okay, Nuggets shot 52% from the field, 37% from 3, 73% from the free throw line, which is unique for the Nuggets because they've been a pretty good free throw shooting team to begin the year, even while missing some key guys. a little bit low in that regard, but they made 13 threes, only turned the ball over 10 times. So it was a solid performance from the team, all things considered. Charlotte, on the other hand, 45% from the field, 30% from three, 76% from the free throw line. They made one more three than we did at 14, turned the ball over 3 more times. So you can understand why this game was as close as it was. Now, Jamal Murray had an incredible game. Okay, he continued his push for his first All-Star nomination on Sunday evening against the Hornets. 34 points, 3 rebounds, 5 assists, 14 of 25 from the field, 2 of 9 from 3. Okay, not incredible from the three-point line in this game, but he had 23 points in the first quarter. Oh, I mean, hard to argue with that if you're Jamal and if you're a Nuggets fan. And Nikola Jokic did Nikola Jokic things, 28 points, 9 rebounds, 11 assists, 11 of 16 from the floor, 4 of 8 from 3. He had some good looks. Okay, I'm not sure how incredible Charlotte's centers are at guarding the three-point line, because there really aren't a ton of bigs in this game who do that, even though more and more bigs are doing that more these days. So Joker got some good looks from 3, and that was pretty evident throughout the game. He knocked them down, as he usually does. Tim Hardaway Jr., 14 points off the bench, man. And then Peyton Watson with 10 points and 8 rebounds off the bench. It was a solid contribution. You got 4 or 5 guys who held it down for you significantly against the Charlotte Hornets that evening. Bruce Brown had a historic game, actually, in some sense. I think there have only been about 6 or 7 games all time where a player has played at least 20 minutes and recorded absolutely nothing on the stat sheet. That's what Bruce Brown did. Okay, Bruce Brown on Sunday evening against the Hornets, 20 minutes, 0 points, 0 rebounds, 0 assists, 0 turnovers, 0 steals, 0 blocks. Yeah, I think he took 3 total shots and he took 1 3 and he missed both. So aside from the other 2 fouls that he got in that game, those were the only numbers he put up against the Charlotte Hornets on Sunday, which is incredible. That's like the 7th or 8th time that's happened in all of NBA history. Absolutely incredible. You'll have to see it. If Bruce Brown had even, what would that be? If Bruce Brown had 8 points, then he would have made my first prediction correct. So a little bit upset at Brown. Or Bruce, what you doing, man? But that's all right. Team won. Miles Bridges had 24, 9, and 8 for the Hornets. He's still holding it down. Hopefully he can get an opportunity to win at some point in his career. I'm not sure if the Charlotte Hornets are going to be able to build a team that can play enough defense and play enough offense consistently at any point in the next 3 to 5 years, but he's kind of pushing the end of his career in the next 5, 6, 7 years probably. And if anyone deserves to be on a winning team, it's Miles Bridges. So sad to see that he keeps slaving away in Charlotte for little to no gain. That's all right. Brandon Miller had 17, 5 and 5, and Liam McNeely, rookie from UConn, at 13 points, 4 threes off the bench. He was pretty fire in the first half for them. So that's the way that Hornets game went. Again, 9-point win against a team that's middle to bottom of the league in pretty much everything, offensively and defensively. This was a little bit disappointing, but for whatever reason, those games happen. So all that matters is that they got the win. Then they had a nice little 3-day break, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday off, and they went to Sacramento to play the Kings again for what is it now? This was the 4th time Nuggets have played the Kings in the first, 2.5 months of the season. Absolutely crazy. But this is by far the most dominant win that the Nuggets have had. They beat the Kings 3 of the 4 times they played them this year. The Kings at this point in time, 13th in the West. Okay, so they're another bottom dweller team. But their bottom dwelling makes a lot more sense than the Charlotte Hornets, because the Kings are not very good at very much. Okay, they're bottom of the league on offense, bottom of the league on defense. They don't shoot many threes, and they don't make many threes. Okay, they don't make their free throws either. So they don't turn the ball over. That's really the only thing they have going for them. But this is really not a very good team. And so I guess had I considered that last week before making my prediction, and not just making my prediction for the Kings game based on the fact that the Kings beat us here in Denver the last time we played, I probably might have changed my prediction there. But this is how this game went. The Nuggets won the first quarter by 15 points. Okay, Nuggets built a pretty solid lead throughout the first quarter. And at that point, you might have thought that this game is going to be headed towards being quite the barn burner. All right. They built that 15-point lead. It was the largest lead they had at that point. Second quarter came by, and the Nuggets built their lead by 8 more points, won the second quarter by 8, built a 23-point lead at one point late in the second quarter. And they headed into the third quarter. They won the third quarter by 5, but their largest lead late in the third quarter was 29 points. And at this point, I'm sure a lot of Nuggets fans who had other things to do on a Thursday evening decided to just check out. And that made sense because in the fourth quarter, the Nuggets won by 3 points. And they, at one point in time, had a 37-point lead against the Kings. This game was not close. The lead just kept building and building and building. And that's what happens when you have a lead that just keeps on amassing against a team that doesn't do very well at all. Okay. Nuggets shot 59% from the field in this game, 41% from 3, 69% from the free throw line. All right. Again, significantly subpar from the free throw line. It's kind of strange for a Nuggets team that's been good at that this year, but they made 12 threes, okay, turned the ball over 12 times. That is what it is. I'm sure a lot of the second and third string guys got a lot of playing time in the second half. Maybe that's part of the reason why the turnovers were a little bit higher than usual and why they didn't make as many threes as they seemingly ought to have. But Sacramento shot 45% from the field, 29% from 3. Ouch. Yeah, so this is not a team that is going to run you off offensively with the 3-point line. 70% from the free throw line, made 11 threes, turned the ball over 16 times. Okay, so this win makes tons of sense. Nikola Jokic had 36 points, 12 rebounds, and 8 assists, 2 steals also. You know, don't forget, anytime someone gives you as a Nuggets fan any shade for Nikola Jokic's defense, you can just remind them that he's number 1 in the league in steals. Okay, I think he might actually lead this decade in steals. I'm not even kidding. He leads this decade in a lot in the NBA, and he's number 1 this year in the league in steals. So he holds his own on defense. That should not be a point of criticism really for very many people. Yes, is it kind of strange that your center is better at getting steals than blocks? Maybe, you know, that's up to your opinion, I suppose, but he gets his defensive hands in there, and he shot 14 of 16 from the field on Thursday evening against the Kings. Elite efficiency, but that's expected. So Peyton Watson had 21 points in this game, 14 of 25 from the field. Wait, I think that's actually Jamal's numbers. Don't know what I'm looking at, but he had 21 points in this game. All right. Here's a fun fact, though, that not a lot of Nuggets fans probably know. In terms of offensive rating for individual players, you know, we were kind of impressed earlier in the year on Hoops and Homers about the fact that Christian Brown was top 10 in the league in offensive rating. Peyton Watson right now, since taking over for Christian Brown in light of Christian Brown's injury, is number 1 in the league in offensive rating. His offensive rating is 132, which is insanely high. Okay, there are actually 5 Nuggets in the top 10 of offensive rating, which makes sense when you have the highest rated offense in the league. But I bet if I'd walked up to even any Nuggets fan and asked, hey, you know, the Nuggets have the best offense in the league so far this year. Who do you think is the highest rated offensive player on this team? I'm sure most people would have said Nikola Jokic, but Nikola Jokic is actually number 2 to our boy Peyton Watson. Obviously, it's because he's getting a lot better looks in the starting lineup with Nikola Jokic. So that part makes sense, but still, I mean, you wouldn't have guessed that he would have been number 1 in the whole league in offensive rating. All right. So that's just the way it is. Cam Johnson had 16 points. Okay. He's continuing to come on nicely, shooting pretty efficiently, a lot more consistently than he was earlier in the year. So that makes a lot of sense. Jonas Valanciunas, solid 15 off the bench. And Tim Hardaway had 11 off the bench too. This is a really nicely constructed team, guys, if you haven't figured that out thus far in the year, because the fact that we have a bench that is deep and that is diverse, not just deep. You know, you can have a lot of good guys coming off your bench, but if they all play generally the same position, it's not going to mean very much from a productivity perspective because of chemistry. We have a guy like Jonas Valanciunas who can dominate in the paint, who can get rebounds, who can score pretty much everywhere on the court, but especially in the paint. You have a guy like Hardaway who dominates from the complete opposite side of the offensive push. On the 3-point line, he's absolutely money. Okay. The team that has been constructed this year has incredible chemistry. We've said that before here on the show, but it's just cool to see that the guys are continuing to show, even on nights where they don't knock down a ton of threes, for instance, and where they might turn the ball over more than they usually do, that they continue to play well together as a team, and that people are taking advantage of the roles that they have effectively without being healthy. Okay, that's just a trend that you love to see if you're a Denver Nuggets fan. All right. As for the Kings, Malik Monk, 18 points. Russell Westbrook, our good old friend Russell Westbrook, 17 points not off the bench. He was starting on Thursday. I think he's actually been starting recently for the Kings as well. Not good if you're Nikola Jokic and trying to track him down on the all-time triple doubles list, because I think he has a few this year in the games that he started. Maybe in a few he's come off the bench, but he had 17. And then the combination of Keegan Murray, this Renaud guy who's their starting center now, I guess, from France, I believe. And then another guy whose last name is Carter. They all had 15 points. So pretty easy win for the Nuggets, needless to say, on Thursday evening. But after this week, the Denver Nuggets find themselves in this position. Okay, they're second in the Western Conference. Makes sense. Only behind the Oklahoma City Thunder, who are having literally a historic season thus far. Literally. Okay, I think they tied the Golden State Warriors for the best 25-game start in NBA history at 24-1. Okay. And they're just absolutely dominating on both ends of the court. You know, it's one thing to be a 24-1 team who's good at offense, right? That's usually that's what the Golden State Warriors were good at, right? Back when they set that record in 2017, 2018, somewhere around then. Okay. They were really good at offense. They were probably pretty good at defense, but their offense was easily their strong suit. The Oklahoma City Thunder this year are destroying teams. They're obliterating teams offensively and defensively. It's just insane. Okay. So if you're the rest of the league, it's very clear at this point. You might have had an inkling before the season started, but now at this point in the year, you definitely know the Oklahoma City Thunder are not to be messed with, and they're definitely building up a fearsome reputation. They're not just those young guys who got lucky last year. This is a team that could be good for the next 3 to 5 years. This is a team that could win 3-4 championships in the next 3 to 5 years. They're good. They're insane. So it makes sense that the Nuggets are number 2 in the conference. The Rockets are right on their back. We'll get to them in a second. Nuggets are second in the West, still have the best offense in the league. Their defense is, again, middle of the pack, bumped up a little bit. I think they were at 17th in the league last week. They're at 14th in the league this week. It's not a significant change. All right. The Nuggets continue to not shoot very many threes, but they continue to make a high percentage of the threes that they shoot. This is similar to last season, where the exact same trend was observed. The Nuggets somehow, and this might actually be the most incredible part of this whole situation that the Nuggets have found themselves in at this point in the season. It's the fact that they have the number 1 offensive rating in the league, and yet they're towards the middle or bottom of the league in 3-pointers attempted per game. So they make a high percentage, but they're not shooting or making a quantitative large amount of threes, and yet somehow they're out shooting all these other teams that they're outscoring, at least all these other teams that are taking more threes per game. Incredible. So this offense is absolutely on fire. Again, defense is middle of the pack. The Nuggets continue to make their free throws. This was a very strange week this week for the Denver Nuggets. They didn't shoot more than 75% in either of the games they played. And at this point in the season, they're 4th in the league in free throw percentage, shooting over 80%. So uncharacteristic week in that regard last week for the Nuggets. But all in all, they've been making their free throws, which is a massive change from last year. Last year, again, they were bottom 5, if not bottom 3 in the league in free throw percentage. So massive turnaround there for the boys. They don't turn the ball over. Nuggets are continuing to play pretty clean basketball. They're top 5 in the league and fewest turnovers per game. So good signs there. On all fronts, the Nuggets continue to hold it down. And that means the incredibly promising thing about this team is that they're continuing to succeed despite not shooting a ton of threes, despite not being healthy, in particular, missing their top 2 defenders, and in particular, trying to figure out how to piece together a bench with their current injury situation. All right. No Christian Brown and no Aaron Gordon has meant that there's been a decent amount of balance in playing time with Zeke Nnaji over the last 2 weeks. This last week, Jalen Pickett got thrown in to the rotation a little bit to mix things up. So a lot of change happening in this team right now, just trying to give guys opportunities to contribute at this current point in the season. And the team is still succeeding. Very, very promising. If you're a Denver Nuggets fan, very exciting, honestly, for the rest of this season. Once everyone gets back to being healthy, there will probably be a small adjustment period, right? Because you have to work these guys back into the starting lineup. They have to get back in game shape. So getting them back immediately obviously has its pros, but it might have a little bit of a waiting period as you wait patiently for the new chemistry to be developed when you go back to your original rotations, if you're David Adelman. So all in all, Nuggets are very exciting right now. Upcoming week predictions for the Denver Nuggets. Okay, well, I failed all 4 of my predictions last week. So that means we have some redeeming to do this upcoming week. Nuggets play 2 games this week. They play Houston here on Monday evening, and I believe they play the Magic here Thursday evening as well. So 2 solid teams. This is the exact opposite of last week. Last week, you played 2 bottom dweller teams in the league. This week, you're playing 2 contenders. All right. So given that the Nuggets are coming home and that they've lost, 4 in a row? I think they've lost 4 in a row now. Goodness gracious, at home. Absolutely unbelievable. Houston is a good team. Like I said, Houston is right on the Nuggets' tail for 2nd seed in the West at this point in the season. And the general profile on Houston is that they are top of the league in offense. They're top of the league in defense, both. They don't shoot many threes, but they do make a lot of the threes that they shoot. They're very similar to the Nuggets that way. Only they shoot way fewer threes than the Nuggets do. I think they're actually last in the league in 3-pointers attempted per game. So interesting situations you got here. Tough Rockets team. You barely beat the Rockets in Houston a few weeks ago. You haven't won at home in 4 straight games, and you're not healthy. I'm going to say the Nuggets lose to Houston Monday evening by at least 10. Okay. And I think it's going to follow a very similar pattern to the Mavericks game, right? It's kind of close for the most part. Maybe there won't be that massive swing in the second quarter that the Mavericks had. Maybe there will. I don't know. But all in all, I think Houston, look, if Dallas found a way to beat this Nuggets team very recently by 10 points, I think Houston can beat this Nuggets team by 10 points. Nuggets won't figure it out at home against Houston on Monday evening. Unfortunately, that's my prediction. Thursday evening, however, still at home, they will figure it out because after losing their 5th in a row at home, they're going to have a fire lit under them internally. And they're going to come out and they're going to dominate against the Magic. Okay. They're going to beat the Magic. I think it'll actually be pretty close, maybe 5-10, but they're going to come out and they're not going to let some of these massive runs that they've let happen at home over the last 4 or so games happen on Thursday evening against the Magic. Okay, so those are my 2 game predictions. Nuggets lose to Houston by at least 10 points, and the Nuggets beat the Magic by 5-10. Okay, those are my predictions from a game perspective. I don't think the Nuggets will make 15 threes in either game. Okay, 2 good defenses that you're facing this week. The Magic defense is top 10 in the league too, I believe. So 2 top 10 defenses. Nuggets haven't shot a ton of threes over the last week or so. They haven't made a ton of threes when they have shot them. So I think they'll shoot a decently high percentage, but I don't think they're going to shoot very many or make very many against either team this week. Nuggets won't make 15 threes in either game. I think Nikola Jokic, as my last prediction, will get a triple-double. And I know that might seem like a sort of lame prediction, but if you think about it, he hasn't gotten a triple-double now for over 5 games. Okay, so he's coming close. Obviously, he's getting a lot of Sombor doubles, usually in the rebound department, which I absolutely don't understand. He leads the league in rebounds, and somehow a lot of these last triple doubles that he's missed by like 1 or 2 rebounds. Doesn't make any sense to me. That changes this week. Okay. I think he's going to step it up because we're playing two playoff contending teams. I think he's going to end his triple-double list streak, get back on that path to passing, who is it in second place right now? Oscar Robertson for second place all time on the all-time triple-doubles list. Yeah, I think that makes sense. So those are my predictions for this upcoming week. Again, in summary, Nuggets will lose to Houston by at least 10. They will beat the Magic by 5 to 10. They will not make 15 threes in either game, and Nikola Jokic will get his first triple-double for the Nuggets in about 2 weeks. Okay, those are my 4 predictions. That's all we have on the Nuggets front right now. Again, incredibly promising stuff here if you're a Nuggets fan. I've seen some stuff on the internet, people being concerned about the Nuggets' inability to win at home recently. They're concerned about the defense. Okay, all of those are explainable with the fact that you're not a healthy team. You've had to recreate your rotations over the last few weeks. So if anyone seems concerned about that, if you know another Nuggets fan who's concerned about that, you can now be the educated one to tell them, hey, it's actually not as big of an issue as everyone's making it out to be. They'll be fine once they get healthy. Okay. And then once they get healthy, they'll start building. They'll continue to flourish throughout the rest of the season. They'll eventually lock down that number 2 seed. And they'll be gearing up to prepare to take down the Oklahoma City Thunder in the Western Conference Finals, en route to winning their second championship in the last 4 years. Okay. Yeah, there you go. So that's all we have for the Nuggets today, ladies and gentlemen. But now we're moving on to baseball. You already know this is my favorite segment of the podcast or the show. By the way, I haven't yet figured out what this is. I know officially at 5280 Media, we call them the podcasts, but it's kind of live. And I'm kind of hoping to get some more engagement from the audience. So maybe it's a show. I don't know. Podcast show. You know, either way, this is my favorite segment. And then the Nuggets, the Rockies had a very interesting week this week. Okay. So it was the winter meetings. For those of you who might not necessarily know, the winter meetings are when a lot usually happens. We didn't have a ton happen, relatively speaking. Maybe we did. We had some major things happen at the winter meetings, because the winter meetings is where all these MLB executives from all these different teams get to come together. They get to hobnob. They get to talk with agents. They get to talk with players if players show up. And so this is usually where a lot of stuff can go down. And so we saw some pretty big moves this week at the winter meetings. We saw Kyle Schwarber return to the Philadelphia Phillies on a massive contract. We saw Edwin Diaz, all-star closer, go to the Los Angeles Dodgers, of course, for a large contract. And we saw Pete Alonso, quote unquote, surprisingly go to the Orioles. It's more surprising that he went to the Orioles. It's less surprising that he left the Mets. I don't know why people were surprised about that. From the end of the season, there was some bit of information that was communicated. I saw the notification on my phone. I don't remember exactly what it said, but it was with reference to Alonso's relationship with the Mets. And at that point, I immediately knew, I was like, this is not going to happen. There's going to be no reunion between these two here. So it was not surprising he left the Mets. Kind of surprising he went to the Orioles. Okay. Good move for the Orioles. Orioles had one bad year last year after having 2 really good years the previous 2 years. And they were like, yeah, that's enough for us. That's unacceptable. We are a contender. We are going to show everyone that we are making an effort to compete. And we're going to challenge the Blue Jays and the Yankees in the AL East in 2026. All right. Good for Pete Alonso. He gets to go compete on a team that actually will make the playoffs. No shade, not too much shade to the Mets there. But I mean, if you are leading your division in the summer and you end up missing the playoffs, that's pretty bad. Okay. Completely understanding. At least I completely understand why Pete would look for greener pastures. But from a Rockies perspective, I guess I have Nuggets on the brain more than I thought today, even though the Rockies segment is my favorite segment. The Rockies did not prioritize player and personnel decisions significantly during this week at the winter meetings. They had the Rule 5 draft. We'll get to that in a second. But what the Rockies definitely did prioritize was filling out their coaching staff. Okay. Filling out some of those executive roles in the front office as well. That's exactly what they did. Okay. They hired new pitching coaches and a new hitting coach this last week. The hitting coach was hired yesterday. not necessarily during the winter meetings, but this is the week of the winter meetings. So I'll throw him in there. Solid moves in all regards. Okay. They got an assistant pitching coach from the Marlins, Alon Leichman. They got the Tigers' former director of pitching, I believe, Gabe Ribas. They got, who else did they get? They got Matt Bushman. Don't know where he came from, but they hired him to be the bullpen coach. And then they hired Matt Daniels, okay, a guy who's tied to Driveline, which is a very notable baseball analytics-driven organization. They hired him to be their director of pitching. So on the pitching front, that's what happened. Like I said, yesterday, they hired Brett Pill to be their new hitting coach. Hopefully he can Brett Pill our offense. Brett Pill. Hopefully that's the play on words that you're picking up there with me. Yeah, so all things considered, solid pitching moves, solid moves for the coaching staff, okay? All these guys are young. I think the oldest of the 4 or 5 guys I just mentioned is 45, okay? And that's a good thing. We'll get to that in a second. But all in all, it's good to see that they're going, number one, outside the organization, like they said they would. They're bringing in a bunch of diverse perspectives from different organizations. You have the Marlins, you have the Tigers, you have, I think Daniels came from the Rangers. I'm not remembering right now, but Daniels and Bushman both came from different organizations. They're going outside of their organization and bringing in a diverse group of guys who are all getting promotions, I believe, to take on these positions. They're getting excited guys from across the league who are motivated to succeed in their new roles. That's the first good sign to see. We'll get to some further takeaways in a second, but I do want to mention they also hired an assistant GM from the New York Mets as well. I think he was a former player for a little bit, but he's been very involved in the Mets scouting over the last few years that he's been with that team. So again, another organization. And the broad overall takeaway here for all these different guys that have been hired this last week to various executive and coaching roles is that they're all young, they're all analytically minded, and they're all innovative. These are 3 great things you love to hear if you're a Colorado Rockies fan. Why? Because it's the exact opposite of the way things have been for at least the last decade, all things considered, right? This is what I love about the way the current organizational structure is set up. You have Paul and Josh, Paul DePodesta, Josh Burns, kind of leading the charge in the organization right now at the executive level. They're both in their mid-50s, okay? They've been around baseball, working in professional baseball for decades. All right. Those are the guys you have leading the organization. Below them, you have guys who have a little bit less experience, but who have worked in a broad array of areas, and they're about 10 to 15 years younger than DePodesta and Burns. Then below them, you have the guys on the field. Okay. The guys on the field are in their late 30s. All right. Early 40s, mid 40s, I guess, with, Ribas. All I'm saying ultimately is that it's cool to see this organizational hierarchy where you have the most experienced guys at the top as the older senior guys, and everyone below them, for the most part, is significantly younger, but smart and innovative, because it gives them the ability to better relate to the players who are the youngest guys in the entire organization. And so you really have this nice experience hierarchy here, if you will. And I think that's really cool. Like I said, we haven't had that the last few years as a Colorado Rockies organization, right? You've had Bud Black, who has been in baseball forever. He was on the field managing the guys who were the younger guys, who were the players. You had Bill Schmidt, who is also an older guy, but he was leading the front office as the GM. So you had a lot of age and experience at every level, pretty much, of the organization. A lot of Bud Black's coaching staff was older as well. It's just cool to see that the DePodesta regime, I don't like saying regime because it has a weird connotation. It's just cool to see that DePodesta is creating this organization in a cool hierarchical way where you have the players who are obviously the youngest in the organization. You have the coaches who are on the field. They're a little bit older than the players, not by much, just a tad bit older. You have the executives just a little bit older than the coaches on the field. And then you have the two guys leading the whole thing who are the oldest, in being 5 to 10 years older than their younger assistant executives. It's a really cool thing to see. I'm not sure how many people noticed that, but it's really cool. They're obviously very analytically driven. Okay. Like I said, Matt Daniels, the new director of pitching, driveline guy. That's all data, all analytics. Okay. That's something the Rockies have needed. We've talked about that extensively before. I also like the innovation aspect, in particular with a guy like Alon Leichman, who's the new pitching coach for the Rockies. At the end of last season with the Marlins, who he was an assistant pitching coach for, they were calling pitches from the dugout. Now, there's usually some pretty decent debate in certain circles about that particular way of calling pitches on the field. Obviously, you want to trust your catcher to be knowledgeable enough about the game, not just from a head perspective, but also in-game scenarios, to the point where you can trust him to be a good pitch caller, understanding his pitcher, working with his pitcher based on what the pitcher has working on any given day against any given team. You want that to be the ideal situation. But the Colorado Rockies are in a position right now where they have two really young catchers. Okay. On top of that, they have a generally younger pitching staff outside of Kyle Freeland. Okay. The bullpen is young. The starters who are in the organization and competing for a starting role in 2026 are young. Okay. There's a lot of youth in the organization right now. And so to put all of that pressure immediately on Hunter Goodman might not necessarily be the best thing. Same thing with Braxton Fulford. But if you can get success with a guy who is pitching smart, who is analytical, who's watching the game and not playing in it, then you take a load off of your catchers to call pitches. You give them pitches based on the data and your observations in game that they might not be seeing because they're so focused on performing their role. It could potentially be a cool thing to see the pitching coach call pitches at some point in the season for the Colorado Rockies in 2026. Not sure they're going to do it. Obviously, just because he did it in Miami doesn't mean he's going to do it here, but it would be really cool to see him do it. I think it would be great for this team right now. And that's very innovative because that's not something that's very widespread across the league as far as I'm aware. So all in all, I love the youth, love the analytical emphasis, and I love the innovation of the guys who have been hired by the Colorado Rockies to fill their coaching staff and to fill their executives and their front office. So as far as staff hirings go, that is what I liked from the last week, and it's incredibly promising. The Rockies are moving in a completely different direction than the direction they've arguably had their entire existence, which is why they've only had 5 playoff berths in over 30 years. Okay. Trying to change that narrative. You'll love to see it. But as far as the roster goes, like we said, there weren't many roster moves made this last week by the Colorado Rockies. There were a few. In particular, 2 stand out more than some of the others. They might actually be the only 2 moves that were actually made this week from a player personnel perspective. The first is releasing Warming Bernabel. Okay, we didn't get the opportunity to talk about this last weekend, even though it happened last weekend. Warming Bernabel was outrighted on waivers, and he opted to elect for free agency instead of accepting an assignment to AAA. All right, so Warming Bernabel will not be with the Colorado Rockies in 2026. And say what you will about that, right? Because Warming Bernabel was at one point in time the top 30 prospect in the Colorado Rockies organization, 2022, 2023. I think in 2023, he got as high as 7th overall in the Colorado Rockies system. So there was some excitement about him in recent years. And he finally made his debut for the team in 2025. Won Player of the Week, his first week in the big leagues. Okay, so understandably, there was a lot of hype around Warming Bernabel. It's unfortunate that the rest of his season didn't quite go the way he wanted it to. He got hurt. He started slumping a little bit, and then he got hurt. And then after he came back from the injury, he was not very good offensively. Defensively, he was okay, but not incredible. Obviously, they moved him to first base because not necessarily a good enough defender to play third at the major league level is probably what they were figuring. And so all that considered, you thought, given that he showed some decent potential early in his tenure at the major league level, and that the Rockies are very thin at first base, that they would keep him around, right? It would only make sense. For whatever reason, they opted not to. This front office decided to move on from him. Not quite sure why, but as long as they have a plan and are trying actively to get deeper at positions that they know they need to get deeper at, whether it be in free agency or via trade, I don't really have an issue with it. We're trusting the process. Okay. We're trusting the new front office to come in here, look at the whole organization, look at the rest of the league and all the opportunities available, and say, yeah, this is a good move. This is a move we need to make. So it was a tough move to let go of Warming Bernabel. Very excited for him in his career. Obviously, a guy who Albert Pujols likes based on the fact that those two worked together. If you have Albert Pujols' signature of approval and support, you're probably going to do pretty decently, assuming you are driven to actually put in the work to succeed at the major league level. So very exciting for Warming Bernabel wherever he ends up in future. But the Rule 5 draft was also this last week during the winter meetings. Now, for those of you who don't know what the Rule 5 draft is, I'm just going to explain it very quickly because I know that there's a decent amount of confusion about how this works. I was scrolling through the MLB Pipeline Instagram page. There was a comment section on the Rockies particular selection, and someone asked, what even is the Rule 5 draft? I'm not really sure what that is. So I gave them a nice little explanation of it. I'll give you all the same exact explanation. So for those of you who are unaware, the Rule 5 draft happens once a year. The Rule 5 draft is for teams that do not have a full 40-man roster. So not every single team can participate in the Rule 5 draft. You have to have available roster space. And the reason you need to have available roster space is because in the Rule 5 draft, you're drafting players from other organizations who have certain criteria met in terms of their professional experience, who have not made the major league level yet. Okay, and who were not added to their team's 40-man roster. And so the unique thing here about the Rule 5 draft is that if a team makes a selection in the Rule 5 draft, the player that they draft will have to be on their 26-man roster, their active MLB roster, during the entirety of the next season. Otherwise, the team that drafted the guy has to send him or offer him back to his original team for a certain price. So really what the Rule 5 draft is it gives prospects who are almost major league ready the opportunity to get that jump to the major league level and actually get significant playing time over the course of a year, assuming they're healthy. And so the Colorado Rockies made a selection in the Rule 5 draft. They drafted with the first overall pick, RJ Pettit. Okay, this guy was a first round pick a few years ago. That's not the thing that stands out the most about him, though. The thing that stands out the most about RJ Pettit is that he is an absolute mountain of a human being. 6'8", 300 pounds. Okay. If you haven't heard that already, this is absolutely incredible. That's quite the imposing presence on the mound. And look, when you're coming to Coors Field and it's harder to pitch by default, you'll take anything you can to help you succeed in that environment. Okay. Whether it's Jimmy Herget having a very funky motion, whether it's Kyle Freeland having a nice little hitch for the first 2 or 3 years of his career, anything it takes to succeed at Coors Field is helpful because the altitude won't help you very much. RJ Pettit is huge. Okay. If you see a 6'8" guy standing on the mound, that arm slot is already by default going to be higher than most of the arm slots you're seeing. So it's going to be harder by default to face a guy who's this tall. Then you add in his repertoire. Okay. Of the pitches he throws 4 pitches, I think, mostly. He's a slider, 4-seam fastball, sinker, changeup guy. Really doesn't throw the changeup very much, but he throws the first 3 most of the time. Solid pitch mix for altitude. Okay. You want a guy who can throw a sinker, get balls on the ground. You want a guy who has a slider. Slider is the better breaking pitch to have between slider and curveball. So he's got a good pitch mix. He can ride that fastball in at mid 90s. I think he can touch upper 90s occasionally. All in all, this is an absolutely incredible selection. This is a guy that will be on the Colorado Rockies guaranteed in 2026 if he's healthy, because he was selected in the Rule 5 draft. And he'll probably be used in mid multiple inning relief. Okay. So think of a situation where Chase Dolander goes 4 innings in a particular game. He gets a little bit beat up. All right. 5th, 6th inning, you throw RJ Pettit out there. He gives you 2 solid innings of relief. Okay. That's the type of role it seems like most people envision him having. Makes tons of sense. It's an area of need for the Colorado Rockies. And I think that move actually showed up their bullpen pretty much for 2026. We'll get to that a little bit later on. So stay tuned for that. All in all, that was a great selection. And it's a selection that makes sense. Like we said a little bit earlier, the Rockies' new assistant pitching coach was the pitching director, that director of pitching for the Detroit Tigers. And that's where RJ Pettit was originally as a prospect. So it would make sense that there's a connection there. Rebus is like, hey, this guy's really good. We drafted him. I've helped manage him in the minor league system of the Detroit Tigers. So let's just take this absolute mountain of a man who has a great pitch mix. Makes too much sense. All right. So that was the new addition the Rockies made from a roster personnel perspective this last week. But now let's take a look at the big picture, right? The Rockies after the winter meetings look like what, reasonably speaking? Okay. So we're gonna talk about the state of the organization right now, and I think it's interesting. We're gonna bring in a past perspective a little bit too. We're gonna talk about the 2018 Colorado Rockies a little bit as well. But as far as 2025 players are concerned, like we've said, there were 57 players that the Colorado Rockies played in 2025. Of those 57, for sure, 27 will not be returning. Just think about that for a second. Okay, absolutely insane. Okay. Almost 60 players used in 1 year, and almost half of them will not be coming back in 2026. A lot of reason for optimism on that front. Okay. Especially if Antonio Senzatella and Chris Bryant also end up getting released. Hopefully. I know Bryant is kind of potentially in the works on some stuff like that based on what I've heard. But if both of those two guys get released, now more than half of the guys who played in 2025 for the Colorado Rockies will not be returning. So as of right now, it's 27. As of right now, the Rockies have 2 open spots on their 40-man roster. So if they want to continue adding, which they obviously do, it's been explicitly stated, they have 2 open roster spots at this moment in time after drafting RJ Pettit, who obviously got added to the 40-man roster and will be on the 26-man roster in 2026. So let's take a look at the current 40-man roster. We're going to just go by position so we can get a good feel for what the organization has right now and what they need and where they might potentially be able to get it in free agency. Like we've said before, we're not sure what Paul DePodesta is looking for in a trade. Okay, Brenton Doyle's name's been thrown out there. Brenton Doyle, at his maximum potential, could be the best player on this team, right? So I have no idea what Paul DePodesta and Josh Burns are cooking up or potentially cooking up from a trade perspective. So I'm not even going to pursue that. We're just going to talk about free agents. But first, let's walk through this 40-man roster, okay? Position by position in alphabetical order. Not that that necessarily matters. So Bradley Blaylock is on the 40-man roster. He's got a 4-seam, he's got a slider, and he's got a splitter. That's his main pitch mix right now. Wasn't good in 2025. All right, plain and simple. I think he had an ERA over 7. Right, he was up and down between the big league team and Albuquerque. Not necessarily sure if we want him to be on the opening day roster. Honestly, he's another one of those guys who was a victim of almost being rushed too quickly. If you'll remember, he was in Double-A when the Rockies traded for him in 2024, I believe. Okay, and then he ended up making it to the major league team late that year. So a little bit rushed. Maybe he gets some more opportunity to develop his stuff in AAA. I know he was messing around with some pitch timing stuff, etc. So he really does need some more time to bake and become fully ready to compete for the Colorado Rockies major league level. McCade Brown is another guy who's kind of in that category. He's the next starter on the 40-man roster. He's got a sinker, he's got a slider, and he's got a curveball. Those are his top 3 pitches, right? He also throws a changeup. His changeup is actually pretty good. And the few times he used it last year, had a sub 200 batting average against. So maybe he learns to throw that more. Maybe with the new pitching staff or pitching coaching staff, they find a way to get him to throw that a little bit more than maybe his curveball, which was not as good. Maybe it was a slider. I forget. Either way, solid pitch mix. Another tall human being. If there's a guy internally who I think has a good chance of sneaking into that 5th spot. Again, this is assuming no other moves have been made. I think he's probably higher on the depth chart than someone like a Gabriel Hughes, maybe, barely. But we'll get to that in a second. Okay, Chase Dollander, obviously, we know him. He was up for a good amount of last year. Was not good, especially at home. Another guy who was kind of rushed in the development process. Really needs some more time in AAA to really hone in on his stuff. But he had a really good curveball. Okay, his top 3 pitches were 4-seam fastball, curveball, and this cutter slider pitch. His curveball was really good. Okay, his fastball was not. And like I've been saying since 2023, when you have a guy who has this high spin rate fastball and relies on that to get some good ride and carry, that's not the type of guy who's going to find it easy to succeed in Colorado. Okay, the altitude eats up that extra spin. It's even on the fastball. Okay, even on a 4-seam. You're not going to get that ride. You're not going to get that carry. It's going to lead you to mislocate some pitches and at a minimum have a lack of consistency between Coors and away from Coors where your pitch will ride a lot more. So Dollander's got a lot of stuff to figure out in that regard. I think he's been talking to Scott Oberg and a few other guys who have had success pitching at Coors Field. Good to see because the kid's got insane potential. So we'll see what his outlook looks like in 2026, probably closer to spring training. I think I expect him to be in the rotation to start the year, though. So we'll see. Ryan Feltner is next on this list. 4-seam, changeup, slider. That's the ideal pitch mix for Coors Field. Assuming you can't get a guy who throws a good sinker or a good splitter. 4-seam, slider, changeup. Great mix. Okay, 2018, Kyle Freeland. 2018, Scott Oberg. Your best starter, arguably your best reliever. Both had that pitch mix. Okay, and they succeeded. Not only did they have that pitch mix, they were better at Coors Field than they were on the road. So that has proven success here. And both of those guys throw a low spin rate, 4-seams, sliders, and changeups, which also helps with the consistency between Coors Field and away from Coors Field. So you're relying less on that spin. Ryan Feltner's kind of in that category. We'll see if he can bounce back here in spring training. I expect him to be in the rotation to start the year in 2026. And it sounds like Warren Schaefer does too, for what that's worth. Kyle Freeland, obviously, he'll be in the rotation. Yep, 4-seam, curveball, cutter. I don't know why he opted to start throwing the curveball more than the changeup over the last few years, but it's actually now his best pitch, funny enough. So maybe that's why. But he hasn't overall been as good as he has been, or as he had been earlier in his career. He'll be back. I think if he can find a way to be more deceptive like he was earlier in his career, somehow with his motion, that'd be phenomenal for him. But he'll be in the rotation for sure in 2026. Tanner Gordon is the next starter on the 40-man roster. 4-seam, slider, changeup. You love to see it. This is the type of guy who the Colorado Rockies need to find. Assuming, again, you can't find the power sinker pitcher that you're looking for. Assuming you can't find a guy with RJ Pettit-like potential. Tanner Gordon, this is phenomenal. Okay? Low spin rate, fastball, slider, changeup. Great for consistency. I think Tanner actually makes the rotation in 2026 as well. He was one of our better starters last year, and he was up and down from Albuquerque at least twice. So highest number of wins for any Rockies pitcher last year. Good for him. I think he'll compete in 2026 for a rotation spot. Gabriel Hughes is the last starter on the 40-man roster right now. This is where it kind of gets a little bit interesting, right? Because you have McCade Brown, who showed some flashes occasionally at the end of 2025, but also made the jump to AA, or from AA to the major leagues. Didn't pitch at AAA at all. And you have Gabriel Hughes, who was coming off of Tommy John surgery, who pitched okay in his first season back from Tommy John surgery. Had a just over 5 ERA in the Pacific Coast League, which is not terrible for a guy in his situation. Okay, he throws a 4-seam, throws a curveball, throws a slider. Those are his top 3 pitches. If there was someone who could be a sneaky candidate to get into the rotation in 2026 from spring training, look for Gabriel Hughes, man. Gabriel Hughes, highly touted prospect when he was healthy after he was drafted in 2022 in the first round, I think. Got a good mix. I think he also throws a changeup. So highly supporting his candidacy for the 2026 Colorado Rockies rotation. In fact, I'd actually probably pick him over McCade Brown, but I think in reality, McCade Brown might have the better chance at making the big league roster out of spring than Gabriel Hughes. We'll see, though. We'll see. I don't know a lot of the behind the scenes there. Okay, a lot of bullpen arms on the 40-man roster. Okay, so we're just going to talk about each of them pretty briefly. Garrett Acton signed off waivers in late October, early November. Why? I don't know. There was no PBO. There was no GM at this point in time. He throws a four seam, throws a slider, and throws a changeup. So for what that's worth, all right, we'll give him an opportunity. A little bit spinnier than you'd like to see, but he's here, and he has the opportunity to make the 40-man or to make the 26-man roster in spring training and get called up during the season. So there's Garrett Acton. Zach Agnos, rookie last year. He's one of the 13 rookies that made their debut for the Rockies last year. Cutter, four seam, splitter. Decent mix. It's a unique mix. Not a big strikeout guy, but at least in his first stint from getting called up last year, he wasn't bad. Then he had some family issues. I think his grandfather died, came back, wasn't the same pitcher. Then he got hurt at the end of last year. So Agnos probably starts the year in AAA, but good bullpen depth, good young arm. Okay. Brennan Bernardino, guy we just traded for in November. One of the first moves made by the new front office. Sinker, curveball, changeup. Love it. Phenomenal move. And he's a lefty too. That's exactly what the Colorado Rockies needed. He was good last year for the Red Sox. Okay. Curveballs, again, not the ideal secondary pitch from a breaking pitch perspective that you want as a pitcher at Coors Field, but his curveball is a lot like Jimmy Herget's. If you look at the spin type, the type of spin he actually gets, it's really not very much of a 12-6 or 1-7 type of curveball. If you think of clock hands, it's actually more of a Jimmy Herget type of curveball, which is almost like a slurve. And that has a different impact in the altitude. It's a lot more likely to succeed from the perspective of variability between Coors Field and away from Coors Field. Love that decision. Hopefully he pans out the way we need him to for like a year or two. Good move. Angel Chavii, four seam, changeup, slider, has an elite changeup. He really does. He had an elite changeup in 2024 when he got called up for the first time. Still does now. The only unfortunate thing about that is that that's his only good pitch. Okay. He throws hard, but he doesn't throw with very much control. And so I think he should probably start the year in AAA. Probably will. Again, decent depth. Needs to work on that slider, though. That slider's not very good. Okay, if you can develop that slider as a solid third pitch, now you got a guy who's pretty scary. Long relief, short relief, however they want to use him. His role got a little bit muddy towards the back end of 2025. So we'll see how he develops. But he'll probably start the year in AAA. Jeff Criswell, our good friend, he's back. Guys, he's back from Tommy John surgery. Presumably, okay, he missed all of last year recovering. I'd assume he'll get an opportunity at some point in 2026 because he was pretty good when he got called up in 2024 for the first time. Throws a four seam, throws a slider, throws a changeup. What more do you need? Okay, there you go. Criswell was a long reliever usually. Okay, 2 or so innings. So do the Rockies need a right-handed long reliever right now? Well, they got RJ Pettit, so it's very likely that Criswell is high on the list of guys who would get called up, assuming that the team needs him to get called up at some point in the year, which is obviously the case. Injuries happen, etc. Criswell will probably start the year in AAA as he builds back into playing shape after recovering from his Tommy John surgery. But exciting arm. It's an exciting arm on the 40-man roster. Seth Halverson, our good friend, throws 101. That's a four seam. That's a splitter. That is a slider mix. Halverson is probably one of my favorite relievers the Rockies have. Now, his control, questionable at times. I think he probably starts the year on the team, but I wouldn't be surprised if he started the year in AAA. Again, he also had an injury the back end of last year. So would it be good to get him some more reps in AAA? Maybe similar to a guy like McCade Brown, okay, where maybe they were rushed up a little bit faster than they should have been. Maybe like a Chase Dolander, rushed up a little bit faster than they should have been. Maybe it'd be good for him to just be the closer for Albuquerque out of spring. Well, I think he does make the team out of spring as of right now. So we'll see how that goes. Obviously, there's a lot of promise with that arm. Jimmy Herget, next reliever on the 40-man, curveball, slider, sinker. It's kind of strange to see a guy who throws his top two pitches, the two pitches he throws most often, as breaking pitches, be a guy who was the team's best reliever in 2025. Okay, that's a little bit strange. But Jimmy made it happen. Again, he's got that funky arm angle. Doesn't throw terribly hard. Throws maybe 91, 92 with his fastball tops, but his breaking pitches are in the low 70s. So that's good velocity variation. Part of the reason he succeeded probably at Coors Field, despite being a guy who throws pretty high spin rate pitches. Herget would be a solid guy again to have in your bullpen to start 2026. Although I've heard rumors that he's preparing to compete for a starting rotation spot in 2026. No, don't do that. There's no reason. How do you have a guy who was your best reliever in 2025 in mostly late inning situations, occasionally long relief situations for 2 or so, maybe 3 innings? How do you take that guy and say, we don't really think that we need your bullpen presence. We do need starting pitching, and we'll just switch you over to being a starting pitcher again. He hasn't had a great track record of being a starting pitcher in the MLB. That would mean he has to throw more pitches on a more frequent basis. Not a good idea. Highly recommend that you keep him in the bullpen as your 7th or 8th inning guy, like he was towards the end of last year. I don't know why you would try to stretch him out to be a starter. Doesn't make very much sense. Just go out, make some moves, bring in some starting pitching. Guys who are actually wound up to do that. That's Jimmy Herget. Wellington Herrera is very interesting. Okay, he's a left-handed reliever. He's been in AA. That's the highest rank he's been in, highest level he's been in the organization. Top prospect in the system. Throws a 4-seam, throws a slider, throws a changeup. Very promising guy. He's a big strikeout guy. And that can either be a good thing or a bad thing. Okay, it depends. Okay, usually big strikeout guys don't succeed at Coors Field because it usually means that they rely on some spin or something like that to get some late break on their pitches or for their fastball, to keep their fastball on a higher plane than the hitter's expecting. That's how they get that whiff. Not necessarily sure if that's Wellington's situation. I do know he is the highest strikeout to innings pitched. He's the highest Ks per 9 pitcher that we have in the bullpen from a reliever perspective in the organization. Okay. High upside, obviously. We need lefty relievers, especially in the future after Bernardino's probably gone. He's on that list. How he gets those strikeouts per 9, we'll find out when he gets the opportunity. But he's a very exciting arm who could make his debut in 2026. And so for that reason, very excited about Wellington Herrera. A lot of promise there in that arm. Okay. Jaden Hill, sinker, changeup, slider, solid reliever. Probably an underrated reliever, honestly. The whole Rockies bullpen overall is underrated. It's the best part of their team right now. And Jaden Hill was a huge contributor to that in 2025. He didn't start the year on the team, which was kind of strange. He was good in AAA. When he got called up, he was good, but it didn't really happen until late 2025 that he got the opportunity to just stay on the team and be good. So he'll have some more high leverage later inning situations in 2026. One would figure 6th, 7th inning, maybe 8th inning, depending on the evening. Very, very good arm. Love Jaden Hill. Very excited about that situation in 2026. Same type of thing with Juan Mejia, the next guy on our list. 4-seam slider. That's it. That's all he throws. A very underrated arm. I didn't know how good he was going into 2025. He got called up after succeeding significantly in AAA. And I was like, wow, okay, this guy's pretty good. He might want to consider adding a third pitch at some point over the next few years of his career, maybe a changeup, something like that. Assuming the Rockies become relevant again and become competitive. It has been noted by very respected former players in this game that when your team makes the playoffs, the relievers that struggle the most are the 2-pitch guys. And so Juan Mejia is really good, but it'd be cool for him to add a third pitch over the next few seasons as the Rockies build back into relevance and competitiveness and maybe push for a wild card in the next 4 or 5 years. So Other than that, a lot to look forward to with Juan Mejia. Carson Palmquist is the next guy on the 40-man lefty. Okay. Another guy with a sort of confusing situation because he was a starter in AAA, got called up as a starter to make his debut last year, didn't pitch well as a starter, got sent back down to AAA as a starter, got called back up later in the year as a long reliever. So I have no idea what role Carson Palmquist will have. I think his best role, as had been said actually since the time he was drafted by the organization, would be a long relief role. Okay, Rockies need left-handed long relievers. Carson Palmquist kind of fits that mold. Those a four-seam, sweeper, cutter, decent mix. Okay, it takes the pressure off of him too. I think the few good starts he had were short inning starts, but he pitched really well. So I'm thinking about the Cubs game. I think he only went 4 innings against the Cubs in that one start. He went 4 innings, but he gave up like 1 or 2 runs. Okay. So I see that as the sort of mold that he should pursue going forward, considering the Rockies do need left-handed long relievers right now. We literally don't have one on our team in our bullpen at the moment. Good looks for Carson Palmquist. He's very similar to Jimmy Herget. Throws a 91 mile an hour fastball, but then that slow 72, 73 mile an hour breaking ball to couple it. So Carson Palmquist will be interesting. I don't think he starts the season on the team. He probably starts in AAA unless the Rockies do want a left-handed long reliever and he pitches well enough in spring training. We'll see. Luis Peralta, man, 4-seam, curveball, changeup. All right. Super high on that guy after 2024, right? He came up after being traded for, again, guy who hadn't pitched past AA, made his debut in 2024 and was absolutely amazing out of the bullpen. 2025 was not the same story. All right. He was not good to start the year, opened the season on the major league roster. Wasn't good. Got then down to AAA, was even worse. Got called up later in that year. Was okay for a few starts, but eventually ended up not being able to maintain that consistency. And he was kind of just in limbo all year last year. It seems like he does know what the issue was. I saw that he was well aware. I think his dad made note to him actually on a call that they had that there was something wrong with his technique. I noticed that too. He didn't really have the same timing that he had last year. And the few times he did have his timing, he wasn't able to maintain that beyond a few hitters. Okay, so technique is Luis Peralta's issue. If he can work on it and come out in 2026 spring training and show that he's fixed that consistency issue, he might start the season on the team because the team needs left-handed relievers. Okay, this is maybe where you see Halverson in AAA. Luis Peralta at the big league level, you never know. But he has to be consistent with his technique. So we'll see how that pans out. RJ Pettit, we already talked about him, so I'm not going to talk too much more about him. You already know. Slider, 4-seam, sinker. That's the situation for him. He'll be a 2 or so inning mid reliever for the Rockies in 2026, guaranteed, because he was taken in the Rule 5 draft. That's the situation with RJ Pettit. A lot to like there. Mountain of a man. Okay. Antonio Senzatella. My goodness. Okay. I'm hoping that Antonio Senzatella either gets back to late 2010s form or gets outrighted. Okay. Gets released. He was not good last year at all. He was a little bit better in the bullpen, but he was not good at all. He was actually I think he was literally the worst starter in the league last year by ERA. Maybe it was Marquez. I think it was him. I think he was literally the highest ERA starter in the league last year. And we're hearing talks that he's going to be on this team in 2026 in a relief capacity. You can go find another long reliever. You already have RJ Pettit. I have more confidence in RJ Pettit and what he could potentially be than in what Antonio Senzatella has shown us based on last year. Now, again, Senzatella was coming off of an injury the previous year in 2024. First year back from injury is tough. But if you're going to let Marquez walk, why wouldn't you release Senzatella? Okay, they were both bad. The only reason Marquez is not coming back is because he's not under contract and you decided to let him go. Something similar should be done with Senzatella. Okay, we're thankful for the contributions he made in the late 2010s for those playoff teams, 17 and 18. He's just not major league quality right now. So something similar to Austin Gomber, I think you just have to release him at some point. But we'll see how spring training goes. For now, he's definitely on the team because he's under contract. All right. Lastly, Victor Vodnik. He's the last reliever on the 40-man. Victor, the supervillain. I guess that's his new nickname. That's a dope nickname. Don't know who gave it to him, but it's very fitting. All right. V squared throws a 4-seam changeup and a slider. All right. I think he'll probably be the closer to start in 2026. He was the closer last year when Halverson got hurt. And even before then, when he had to step in and get some saves, he was solid. Okay. He started off the season slow, but as the season went on, he became really solid. Okay. Not a big strikeout guy, but he gets outs. And he had a sub-3 ERA, I believe. I think he had a 2.98 ERA. Check that for me. But all in all, he's really good, man. He's really good. Victor Vodnik is fantastic. Okay. So that's the whole pitching staff. All right. There's a need for lefties. There's a need for lefty starters. There's a need for lefty MLB ready relievers. But all in all, not too upset about the situation we have there internally from a pitching perspective. Now we get to the position players. Should be a little bit easier. Braxton Fulford. All right. If you're thinking about a player build, right? Not necessarily guys' statistical production. All right. What would statistical production be? This would be guy's strikeout rate or his walk rate or his chase rate or his exit velo. We want to think about a guy through the lens of who he is as a player from a physical and skill build perspective. Okay. So that's how we're going to evaluate the position players. We evaluated the pitchers based on their arsenal. We're going to look at the position players through a lens of, can they hit all types of pitches? Fastball, off speed, breaking ball. Do they hit the ball in the air or do they hit the ball on the ground? And what of the 5 tools is their best tool? Okay, those are the 3 lenses we're going to look at each of our position players through. All right. Braxton Fulford can hit fastballs really well. Can't hit breaking balls. Can't hit off speed. Okay. Hits the ball in the air, which is great. By the way, in case it was unclear, you want guys who can hit the ball in the air at Coors Field. Okay. Because the ball travels farther. So we really do want most of the guys on our position player list to be guys who hit the ball in the air. If they don't, potential trade bait if they have value. All right. So Braxton hits the ball in the air. He can really only hit fastballs. And his best of the 5 baseball tools, which for those of you who don't know, are hitting for average, hitting for power, speed, fielding, and arm strength. Of those 5 tools, Braxton's best tool, I think, is his speed. Okay. He was like 80-somethingth percentile in sprint speed, and he's a catcher. Enough said. Okay. He'll be a backup catcher probably to start the year, unless we go out and sign a veteran catcher, which is probably ideal, but probably unlikely. Okay. Braxton's right about at that point in his career where he needs those opportunities more regularly. Hunter Goodman, best player on your team. He'll be your starting catcher. All right. He hits everything well. Fastballs, off speed, and breaking pitches. Hits the ball in the air. Okay. And he hits for power. That is the ideal Colorado Rockies hitter, ladies and gentlemen, if that wasn't clear from the season he had last year. First 30 home run Colorado Rockies position player in years. Okay. Hunter Goodman, phenomenal. Enough said. Won a Silver Slugger award for a reason. Okay. Good hitter. Now we go to first base. By the way, okay, those are the only 2 catchers we have on the 40-man roster. I should note this because there are some positions here that there's literally only 1 guy on the 40-man roster, which could be a depth concern. Among them is first base. Okay, we already know this. Right? We already know the Rockies need a first baseman, quite literally. They let Bernabel go. The only 40-man roster first baseman right now is Blaine Krim. Okay. Blaine Krim played all right in the handful of games he played with the Rockies last year. Okay. Hits the fastball. Doesn't hit breaking balls or off speed well at all. Okay. Hits the ball in the air. Great. And he hits for power. Great. Is he going to hit fastballs well enough to the point where he earns the role of starting first baseman in the spring? Probably not. So you're going to want to bring in a first baseman in free agency. Now, let's take a look at some of the available free agent first basemen really quickly, because there are a decent amount of options. Okay. But given the fact that the Rockies are in a position where they really only need a guy who can be on this team for the next year, maybe 2 max, because Charlie Condon is coming to take that first base role, I think he'll be good enough to earn it. You really only want to sign a free agent first baseman who can be here for the next year or two and who fits that mold. You really want a guy on your team who hits the fastball well, hits the ball in the air, and hits for power at the first base position. Okay, at least. It's a corner spot. You need a power guy there. Okay. Of the free agents available, I think the top 3 options are Nathaniel Lowe, Rhys Hoskins, and Josh Bell. Not likely you sign Hoskins. Okay. Hoskins has been on competitive teams his entire career, pretty much. So I don't know why he would come to Coors Field just to hit a decent amount of home runs. Okay. Maybe you could get Rhys Hoskins on a 1-year deal. A lot to like about Rhys Hoskins. Hits the ball in the air 70% of the time, which is insanely high. So I think he would absolutely love Coors Field. But injury issues the last few seasons, and I'm not sure he'd want to come to a non-competitor. Okay. Josh Bell and Nathaniel Lowe are the 2 guys that you might want the most in this situation. And between the 2 of them, I think Nathaniel Lowe is the better option. Okay. Nathaniel Lowe is a left-handed hitter. Josh Bell's a switch hitter. Okay. Josh Bell's best pitch type that he hits is breaking pitches, which is interesting. But Nathaniel Lowe is more normal. Okay. Nathaniel Lowe hits the fastball well, not very good at hitting either of the other 2. No, actually, he's good at hitting off speed. So he's not good at hitting breaking pitches, but he's good at hitting off speed. Josh Bell, really good at hitting breaking pitches, good at hitting the fastball, not good at hitting off speed. So at that point, it's just a toss up, right? Do you want the switch hitter who can hit breaking balls, or do you want the left-handed hitter who is a power bat who can hit fastballs, okay, and off speed? Right? Who do you want? I think you can get Lowe for cheaper. I think Lowe has been on better teams the last few years. He was with the Texas Rangers, I think, when they won their championship. He was on the Red Sox late last year. If you want a guy who's been on winning teams recently, you could bring some practical advice to your organization. Might be a front there for Lowe to have the upper hand. But Josh Bell is probably the more likely option to be signed, right? Because he's been on teams that are not competitive in recent years, and he's a switch hitter, and he hits breaking balls, which is something the Colorado Rockies do need. So interesting decision there from the free agency perspective, but they do need a first baseman because Blaine Crim is the only one on the 40-man roster right now. Second base is interesting. Okay. You have Adael Amador, and you have, Ryan Ritter. Ryan Ritter played shortstop in AAA, switched over to second base when he got called up. Okay. He's probably going to be a second baseman at the major league level. Those are the only 2 you have on the roster right now. And so considering we're not there yet, but considering you only have 1 third baseman who's equally inexperienced, if you have to make a decision, would you rather let either Amador or Ritter be the starting second baseman this season? Or would you rather go out and sign a second baseman and let our inexperienced third baseman, who we'll get to shortly, start the season at third base? Interesting decisions that management will have to make. Amador, from a build perspective, Amador is a fastball hitter, doesn't hit off speed, doesn't hit breaking ball. Okay. Hits the ball in the air. They might be a lot of pop-ups, but he hits the ball in the air. All right. And of the 5 tools, he hits for average. Interesting role potentially for him as an 8-9 hitter in this lineup. Similar for Ritter. Ritter actually hits all pitches pretty evenly. Right. Funny enough, evenly for me is within 25 points batting average on all the pitch types. So Ritter hits all pitches pretty evenly. He hits the ball on the ground a lot though. Interesting. So he makes a lot of contact on all pitch types, but it's not very solid and it's on the ground. Interesting. Something to consider there. His best tool is speed though, and that's something the Rockies need. Ritter's a good base runner. And so if you're thinking about 8-9 hole second base, are you okay with one of these 2 guys holding that position down? You think either is ready for the starting second base spot in 2026? I think between the 2, Ritter likely has the upper hand. He's older. He's played better at the major league level than Amador has. And I think for that reason, I'd say I'm okay with Ritter being the starting second baseman and starting the year on the team, on the 26-man roster, if that decision had to be made based on this situation at third. Okay. The only third baseman on the 40-man roster, and one of 2 prospects who are in the top 30 prospects list for the Colorado Rockies. is Kyle Karros. Okay. Rockies are very thin at third base. Very thin. Karros' build, he hits the fastball well, doesn't really hit off speed or breaking pitches very well, hits the ball in the air, and his best tool is fielding. Okay, so you have a defensive-minded third baseman who hits the fastball well and in the air. Is that the guy you'd rather have starting at third and go sign a second baseman so that Amador and Ritter get more developmental time? I don't know. Interesting decisions all in all. I think Karros wasn't terrible at the major league level last year. He reminded me a lot of Nolan Jones when he looked at a lot of strikeouts last year, just watched pitches right in the zone for strike three. That's kind of annoying. A little bit too selective. Something similar with Sean Bouchard. Those are guys that really just need to build a little bit more confidence in their pitch selection. And given that Karros didn't play a ton in AAA last year before getting called up to the big league squad, because he played most of last year in AA, I think it'd be good for him to start the year in AAA and for the Rockies to go out and sign a free agent third baseman. Okay. Of the free agent third basemen that are out there, there's really only one option that makes sense, and it's Yoan Moncada. Okay. We talked about him on the very first episode of Hoops and Homers when we did a much more simple walkthrough of the team. But Yoan Moncada hits the fastball well, doesn't hit breaking balls or off speed well, hits the ball in the air, and he hits for power. Okay. He's also pretty cheap, but he's not a good defensive third baseman. And so if defense is something you're significantly concerned with, you might not want to go pay all that money. I say, quote unquote, all that money, but you might not want to go and pay a guy who is not going to be incredible defensively and will not be incredible offensively. He'll be better than Karros probably offensively, but marginally so. So interesting decisions for the Rockies right now. Short at third base, inexperienced at second. Interesting decisions. These are things that the front office is going to have to work through over the next few months. Tovar's at short. That's pretty locked down. He's the only shortstop on the 40-man roster, but he's also got 6 years left on his contract now, I think 6 or 7. So he'll be here for a while, assuming he's not traded. He hits everything pretty evenly, hits the ball in the air, and his best tool is fielding. Okay. He's a big extra base hit guy, loves his doubles. He's known for that now pretty much at this point in his career. You love to see it. So not much else needs to be said about Tovar. He was not healthy in 2025. He should be healthy in 2026. Assuming he stays healthy, he could be he will be one of the 3 best players on this team. Okay. Now let's take a look at the outfield. Of all the places the Rockies have the most depth, it is the outfield. On the 40-man roster right now, in left field, we have Jordan Beck and Sterling Thompson. Okay, very interesting. Jordan Beck obviously played a lot for the Rockies in 2025. He hits the fastball well. I think he hits off speed okay. He doesn't hit breaking balls well at all, though. Hits the ball in the air. Love to see it. And his best tool, believe it or not, is speed. Okay, he's up there in sprint speed. I think he's in the 80-somethingth percentile of sprint speed. So Jordan Beck, solid outfielder in left field, got decent arm strength too. And I think he hit high 260s last year, which is not bad for a guy in his first full season on the team. I think he's got left field locked down. I'd be surprised if he was traded. So good guy that you want in your lineup there in left. Sterling Thompson also hits the fastball well, hits the ball in the air, and also has a speed tool as his best tool, arguably. You could argue that he hits for average as well, but he hasn't yet made the major league level yet. I think he's a sneaky guy to sneak onto the 26-man roster, though, in 2026 out of spring training. Similar to Gabriel Hughes, they're both at that stage in their career where they've proven enough at the AAA level to the point where you could give them an opportunity. Rockies need left-handed bats, too. That's another reason why I say this. So interesting to see how Sterling Thompson does in the spring. He was obviously protected from the Rule 5 draft, added to the 40-man roster for a reason. So we'll see if he can take advantage of that. Brenton Doyle in center field. Obviously, there are trade rumors that there are contenders, like good teams, calling the Rockies to see if he's available for trade. We'll see, because Brenton Doyle obviously did not have the greatest of 2025s, had a great 2024, relatively speaking. 2025 was a rough year for him, especially from a personal perspective with the loss of a baby. in his family. So that definitely impacted him. I think that happened earlier in the season, but towards the end of the season, he became again one of the best hitters in that lineup. And that makes sense. He hits all pitches well, relatively speaking, evenly. Well, he hit 233 in 2025, but he hits all of them pretty well, generally speaking. Okay. There's no pitch that he struggles to hit more than the others. Hits the ball in the air, and his top tool is really 4 of the 5. Honestly, I was trying to think which of the tools Brenton is best at, but it's like, okay, he's got an insane arm. He's like 90-somethingth percentile in arm strength. He's got an insane range. So fielding, again, 90th percentile in fielding. Speed, he's 99th percentile in speed, I think, 98th or 99th percentile in speed. So insanely fast. When he is hitting, he hits more for power than he does average. This guy could be the best player on this team if he was playing at maximum potential. And so for that reason, I would encourage the Rockies not to trade him yet. I know it's tempting. I say you give Brenton Doyle another chance. I say 2026 has to be Brenton Doyle's prove it year, because there's a lot of potential in there, dude. Obviously, he's won 2 Gold Gloves. The bat is there. He has the talent. He showed it in 2024. With 2026 on the horizon and 2025 kind of in the rearview mirror, taking obviously the positivity that he had at the end of last year, I see no reason why Brenton Doyle cannot be the best player on this team. I've been saying that since 2023. Love the tools. He's effectively a 4-tool player. Okay. Obviously the power needs to be proven, but dude, Brenton Doyle should be this franchise's center fielder for the next 5+ years. If he can stay healthy, and if the bat can be closer to 25 homers this season, 260 batting average. Okay. That's a franchise center fielder, because he's going to play Gold Glove defense, and Colorado needs a Gold Glove center fielder running around that massive outfield. All right. In right field, we have 3 right fielders. Okay. Yanquiel Fernandez, Mickey Moniak, and Zach Veen. Okay. Of all the guys that you might consider trading, I think the right fielders is where you'd look to first. If you're trying to add depth in other positions as the Colorado Rockies front office, you should look to your right fielders. Okay. Yanquiel Fernandez hits the fastball well, doesn't hit breaking balls or off speed well. He's a very balanced hitter. Okay. Hits the ball on the ground almost as much as he hits the ball in the air. Very interesting. Something to consider. Okay. His top tool is his arm strength by far. Okay. Absolute cannon of an arm. That's why he was put in late in games last year. It was pretty much for his defense. Absolute cannon. Threw some runners out last year too. If you can't become a guy who hits the ball in the air closer to 55, 60% of the time, this might be a guy you might consider trading. There's a lot of tools in there. Okay. A lot of tools. And in a place that's a little bit more pitcher friendly than Coors Field, hitting the ball on the ground is a lot more acceptable. But you do really need to be able to put a charge into one a lot more regularly. He has that track record. He hasn't shown it yet at the major league level. I get he made his debut in 2025, but in 2026, if that doesn't change, assuming he's not traded before then, he's probably at the top of the list of guys in the outfield who you'd trade for depth elsewhere. If you can't get that ground ball rate a little bit lower. Mickey Moniak probably will be on the team. Fernandez, by the way, I think will probably be on the team if he's not traded for that reason, for the defense. Mickey Moniak will also be on the team, hits the fastball well, hits the ball in the air, and his top tool is speed. So he's not a great defender, even though he's fast, not a good fielder, okay? Does not have arm strength, really, whatsoever, okay? He's not a plus defender in right field, but he's a good bat. That's really where he made his name for this team. Hit like 24 home runs in 2025. So this is kind of where you play the platoon game, right? You have Tyler Freeman also. We'll get to him in a second because he's more of a utility guy, plays infield and outfield. But Freeman is the better right field defender because he's got better arm strength. Mickey is best in a DH role where he doesn't have to run around the outfield and play defense and can just focus on getting 3 or so at-bats every game. He's usually, well, at least last year, he was lifted for a pinch hitter when lefty relievers came into the game because he's not great at hitting lefties. All right. We'll see how that develops, but he'll be on the team in 2026, assuming he's not traded. And he'll be in right field. Zach Veen, man, if there was a guy who had more hype around him, you'd be hard pressed to find one over the last few years. Zach Veen is someone who Rockies fans have been very excited about. And in his first stint at the major league level, he was very disappointing, to say the least. Okay. He hit off speed, the best of the 3 pitch types when he got called up. Okay. Hit the ball in the air, and his top tool is speed. Okay. Another fast guy. The only issue here is that, like we've said, there's so much depth in the outfield. And on top of that, he hasn't proven that he can hit high fastballs yet, similar to Yanquiel Fernandez. One of the reasons why both of them kind of struggled in their first taste of the big leagues in 2025 is that they couldn't hit high fastballs, similar to Ryan McMahon in 2023 through 2025. Guaranteed swing and miss, pretty much. If you throw a fastball just right at the top of the zone. Zach Veen struggled with that. So assuming he made the necessary technical changes to be able to get to those pitches for the rest of his 2025 season in AAA, that's a guy who has some serious upside and potential for the Colorado Rockies. All right. Of these right fielders, I actually like his potential the most of all of them. Okay. I think he can be about the same, if not a better hitter than Mickey Moniak. And I think he can provide a more rounded defensive presence in right field than Yanquiel Fernandez can. Okay. So I like Zach Veen the most of our right fielders, but I think similar to Fernandez, he's probably towards the top of my list in terms of trade bait because of that skill set that he has and the fact that we just have so many needs elsewhere on this team and so much depth that there's really no reason why he wouldn't be up there towards the top of that list. All right. So those are the outfielders. Now we have 3 players left on the 40-man roster that we have to think about. All right. Chris Bryant, Tyler Freeman, and Troy Johnston. Okay. We're going to start with Chris Bryant. Chris Bryant. Oh, brother. Okay. If the reports are true that the front office is currently working behind the scenes to figure out some legal things so that Chris can be let go, that would be great news. Otherwise, I'm just going to work with the reality that I do know for sure, which is that he's probably going to be on the team in 2026. He's probably going to be hurt. So he's probably not going to play very much, which is why they do need to release him. And it would be great if they could work on expediting that. Because he's not, even though he has the track record he does, being a successful player, he doesn't really have that coach vibe in the dugout. Like it'd be a difference if he was not healthy, but like a positive presence in the clubhouse. Doesn't seem like anyone really wants him there, right? He's kind of just that really overpaid guy who was really, really good at the beginning of his career and has been really bad and really not healthy the last 3 or 4 years. That's not a guy you want on your team as you're trying to build a new culture towards building sustainable success. Has to be a guy who's not on this team at some point in the next few months. But he hits the fastball for what it's worth, hits the ball in the air, and his best tool is probably his arm. That's why he was put in the outfield, considering we've had Ryan McMahon at third base for the last few years, and he had gotten moved to the outfield in the early 2020s with the Cubs and the Giants. That's his best tool at this point in his career. But I hopefully we don't have to see that skill set play out for much longer because it's probably just going to be depressing. He kind of just needs to retire. I agree with what I've heard from some other people. Just retire, get released, sign a 1-day deal with the Cubs, retire a Cub. Okay. That's the best situation here for all parties involved. That's Chris Bryant. Okay. With Tyler Freeman, a utility guy, there is a lack of depth at second base, like we said. Okay. This is where it gets kind of interesting because Freeman is kind of straddling 2 positions where there's not a ton of certainty or depth or player quality. Okay. At second base, he's not incredible at second base defensively from a fielding perspective. He fits the second base mold. Okay. Is he a better second baseman than Amador or Ritter defensively? I don't know. I think not. I think Ritter is a better defender than he is. I think even Amador is a better defender at second base than he is. So I don't really expect him to get an opportunity to start at second base when all is said and done. Will he get second base reps in spring? Probably. Yeah, assuming he's on this team. But right field is probably where he's going to be planted most of the time. Like we said earlier, he's got good arm strength, and that makes sense. He was also one of the best hitters on the team last year. But even though he hits the fastball well, doesn't really hit the breaking ball well, doesn't hit off speed well, he hit the ball on the ground most of the time. Not the type of guy you want at Coors Field. Okay. Now he gets on base and he's kind of a base stealing threat. Okay. Speed is his top tool. So there's a lot to like about that, especially as a guy who's batting leadoff. He batted leadoff a lot the last half of last year and he succeeded. Okay. Whether he DHs or plays in right field most of the time, I think will just depend on the lineup. Like I've said earlier, I think based on the way this roster is currently constructed, he's the better defender than Mickey Moniak. He should play defensively in right field. Mickey should DH. Okay, that should just be the setup on days when Freeman is in the lineup, right? It'll be interesting to see how that gets played out, but I think Freeman, although he is a utility guy, and it should be on this team, at least to start the year, should probably get some reps in right field, mostly in spring training. And we'll see how his skill set fits in as we figure out depth at some of those middle infield positions like second base. Troy Johnston is the last one. Okay. Troy Johnston is also, Johnston is also a utility player. He's a left-handed bat, something the Colorado Rockies need. Got called up for the first time in 2025 by the Miami Marlins. He hits the breaking ball the best. Okay. It wasn't a large sample size. So if I had to bet, I'd bet he probably hits the fastball best. But at the major league level last year, he hit the breaking ball the best. Okay. Hits the ball in the air and he hits for average. Solid. Okay. An intriguing utility bat. He also technically plays first base, although mostly in 2025, he was in left field or right field. Okay, so he's also a utility player for that reason. Maybe he'll get some good reps at first base in spring, assuming the first base situation doesn't change significantly. We'll see how it goes for Troy. Troy will probably be on the 26-man roster to start 2026 just because the Rockies need that left-handed bat, and there's a lot of intrigue there. He's got a pretty cool swing, in my honest opinion. That's all I really know about Troy. I think he fits what the Rockies need. And so for that reason, I'm excited to see what he could bring to this team in future. But all in all, that's the overview of the current 40-man roster. And what you'll notice is that the Rockies definitely need a few more pitchers who are ground ball explicit. Okay, what does that mean? Sinker, slider, splitter, or changeup. Okay, that has to be the ideal pitch mix, all things considered, for a guy who can succeed the most between Coors Field and away from Coors Field, and just from a consistency perspective. You don't want big strikeout per nine guys. Okay, think of the largest strikeout per nine guy that the Rockies have had from a pitching perspective over the last 8 or so years. It's Germán Marquez. Germán Marquez in 2018 peaked at like 10 strikeouts per nine. Big strikeout guy. But his ERA at Coors Field was almost 2 times higher than it was on the road. Now, he was good in 2018, obviously. He had a sub-4 ERA. It was not good at Coors Field. He had an ERA over 4.5, which, again, relatively speaking, is pretty good for a pitcher at Coors Field, but he had a sub-3 ERA on the road. So strikeout guys don't succeed at Coors Field. Ground ball guys do. In particular, ground ball guys who throw low spin rate fastballs like sinkers, who throw a good changeup, and who throw a slider or a slurve or like a sweepy curveball type of pitch. Those are the guys who succeed at Coors Field. Okay. That's who the Rockies need more of. If not that, simple 4-seam changeup slider arms, those will be phenomenal. Okay. Like we said earlier, 2018, Kyle Freeland, 2018, Scott Oberg, your best starter, arguably your best reliever. Both were better at Coors Field than they were on the road, and both had that pitch mix. So we'll see how it goes. As far as offense goes, Rockies want guys who hit the ball in the air most of the time. They want guys who can either hit for power or average. But if they hit for average, you probably want a guy who's a little bit better at hitting breaking balls or off speed. Okay. If you get a guy who hits fastballs for average, you're probably going to end up with a player who hits a lot of singles, maybe a few extra base hits, maybe more of a Tovar type of player. But do the Rockies really need that? They need that. I'm sure every team needs that. But for the Rockies in particular, the ball travels in Coors Field. You need guys who put the ball in the air and who can put it out. Okay, not just end up at second base for someone else to put it out. You probably want guys who can put it out of the park. And so that said, we might touch more on the 2018 Rockies roster on the next week's show. We're already, we're an hour and 40 minutes into this stream. Goodness gracious. Yeah, this has been a pretty detailed walkthrough of the Rockies roster. So I think that said, we're going to drop it here. We're going to move on to our final segment and see if there are any comments in the audience Q&A. And then we'll wrap up today's show. But it's been pretty detailed. If you've stuck with me thus far, thank you for doing so. Hope you've enjoyed this detailed walkthrough of the Nuggets week and mostly the Rockies' current organizational standing after the winter meeting. So let's take a look here. Steve is on. Okay. I think we might have to set up a nice little pay-per-view boxing match between Steve and I, because Steve, love you, man, but you keep insisting Warren Schaefer is a bridge manager. He's not a bridge manager. We're going to have to fight about that. And so let's get the pay-per-view set up. Let's get the boxing cage settled, man. Yep. We're going to have to do it. Warren is the guy. Warren is the guy as long as this team continues to build into a successful organization. Well, what is he saying? Yeah. Brett Pill, 2012 Giants legend. Yeah, man. Of course. See, this is the nice thing. It's not just nice that he came from the Dodgers as a guy who was instrumental in their prospects development as a minor league hitting coordinator, I believe is what he was, something like that. But he's also literally been a player in the league for teams that have been successful, albeit for a short period of time. But I mean, the 2010, 2012, and 2014 Giants teams can't complain with being a part of an organization that has won World Series in the last 10, 15 years. Okay. So very excited about Brett Pill. Like we said earlier, hopefully he can red pill our offense so we can just get back to that Blake Street Bombers type of mentality. But we'll see. We'll see, man. At a minimum, I love the fact that he's young, that he can relate to the guys better than some of these older coaches that we've had over the last few years can. So, like I said, maybe we'll talk about the 2018 Colorado Rockies roster, the last time the team made the playoffs, one of the best teams in Rockies history, 90 wins. Okay. Got swept in the NLDS. We'll compare a potential 2026 26-man Rockies roster to that 2018 Colorado Rockies roster and see what work has to be done for the Rockies at a minimum to get back to that level of competitive ability. If not, supersede and be better than that team going forward, which hopefully they are. Once again, thank you guys for listening to Hoops and Homers this week. This was a really long episode. There was a lot to talk about. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully you continue to check out the other podcasts and content that we have on 5280 Media here on this YouTube channel, on our social media pages. Rockies Now also. You got to go check out Rockies Now. If you enjoyed our Rockies conversation today, Steve and Tom and Adam and a lot of the other guests that they have on those shows have fun combos about the Colorado Rockies. So go check that out if you haven't already. Till next Saturday, we hope you have a fantastic week, and we'll see you then. Till there, take care and peace out.